Good evening. If we could call this meeting to order. If we could start with a moment of silence for prayer or reflection. Thank you.
Point of privilege, Your Worship.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I might, I'd like to use the podium. Point of privilege here. Last week on November 14th, I was honored to go back to Germany where I played some hockey for 6 years, and we had a reunion there, and in that time it was a great experience where that was my home away from home from Medicine Hat for 3 years, from 1989 to 1992, and I have the privilege of going back again for a week, a very short period of time, but in that week I met a lot of friends again and a lot of teammates that I hadn't seen for 27 years, so it was fun to go back there. By being a counselor in Medicine Hat, it brought me to the point where I want to brag a little bit about our community and talk a little bit about Medicine Hat, and I wanted Deckendorf to know that. Deckendorf's a little town that's about 130 kilometers east of Munich. It's just about to the Czech border. Very beautiful place. It rides on the Donau. They've got about 37,000 people there, and they do have a Burgermeister, which is the mayor, which you can see on the picture here. He's the Burgermeister. He's been the Burgermeister since 2007, which is the mayor. Very young guy. He's only 41 years old. The funny part about that is I went into it's called the Rathaus. They have some strange names in German of what a councillor is and what a city hall is. So City Hall is the Rathaus, and this is the new Rathaus because they built a new one, I think, 10 or 15 years ago. The old Rathaus is in the middle of town, so now it's a bar and a restaurant and office buildings. So it's not new, it's old. It's probably 150 years old in the middle of the city. But anyways, I thought I'd brag a little bit. I'd go and see him, and lo and behold, he was there, and actually went up to his office. He walked out the door and he says, "Oh, Brian Varga," he says. He says, "When I first met you, I was 15 years old," he said. So I was surprised at that. He said he was a fan of ice hockey at that time, which was a rarity to me, but it was very, very humbling to know that he actually watched the games back in 1989 to 92. So I got to meet the mayor, or the Burgermeister. Actually, what he is called is the Oberbürgermeister because he's in charge of the whole area around. Like so. Our Mayor Clugston would be in charge of Redcliffe, and he'd be in charge of Cypress County, so that's what he does. He's got about 10 other cities and towns around him that he looks after. But anyways, I talked to him. I says, "Will you take my flag, because I'd love you to take my flag as a memento of me living in your fine community for 3 years," and he said, "Sure." We went outside the new Rathaus and took this picture. Now, just one note that I wanted to say, there's one mayor, but in this little town of 37,000 people, they have 40 councillors. So I don't know how they ever get anything done with 40 councillors, but I guess they do. There's a lot of, their table would be a heck of a lot bigger than what ours is. So, but anyways, with that being said, once I presented this to him last Tuesday, he went upstairs, and I got a presentation to the mayor for here. He actually gave me one of his fines. So for us to be a little bit associated with them and our time spent together here and there, it's a Deckendorfer flag. So if the mayor would come up, I want to present them with the flag from Deckendorf. It's a lot taller than either you or me, so it's going to be tough to unveil it. But yeah. Hopefully somewhere we can hang it. from Deckendorf in Germany, so presented to the mayor. Okay, I'll do that too. If I might, and it was very humbling to be there because in 2013 they had a major flood that went through their community. The exact same time that we had our flood. The Donau was overflowing its banks, and the Isser River, which is the second river beside there, they had floodwaters come in and actually came through the backside, and they had a major catastrophe in their small community also. So this mayor had to go through the same things. In the low spots, the water was actually above me, so that isn't very high, but it was above me probably at 6 or 7 feet was what it was in the houses. So they had a major catastrophe where it took 3 weeks for the water to go down in this small community. And the funny part about this is I drove along, they built berms after that, right? After the fact again, just like we did. They built berms along the river banks so that they wouldn't have this problem again. And actually some of the features that are done by them are exactly the same. They had the wall with the metal gates, no different than what we've got at the Y and probably at City Hall here. They've got the exact same technology working in their community where they have ways to go into the river, but yet when the river overflows its banks, they can shut that off. So it was amazing to see this, that the technology is worldwide and they're actually doing the same thing there. Of course, they hope that it never happens again, but you never know, right? We hope that it never happens here again, but at least we're going to be aware of the situation and be able to contain the situation. So a little offering to you and a little bit of history of where I was, and it was great to be back there and to see them all again, and hopefully a piece of Deckendorf is instilled in me so that I can talk a lot about a lot of the stories that happened in Deckendorf. And it's a little community just like ours is, so it's got a lot of special traits, and hopefully one day you get to see it there. I handed out about 100 pins, and I told them all to Google Medicine Hat so that they know what I'm talking about, and hopefully they all do. And hopefully someday down the road they come and visit us. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Could I get a motion for reception of the flag?
Second.
We vote. And that was unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Varga.
Moving on now to adoption of the agenda. I do have one item to add, which will be 8.2, appointment to Friends of Medalta Board.
Okay. Any other additions? All right, we'll adopt the agenda as amended.
Adoption of the minutes, item 2.1, page 3, 5 minutes from our November 6th regular meeting.
Any errors, omissions? Seeing none, we'll adopt the minutes.
Moving on now to presentations. Our first presentation is item 3.1. It's the YMCA of Medicine Hat. We have Sharon Haywood here as the CAO of the YMCA, and she's here to talk about Peace Week, which is November the 18th to the 25th.
Welcome, you have the floor.
Thank you. Peace Week at YMCA is a time when we celebrate the presence of peace in our communities and reflect on the peace building that happens all year, both inside and outside of the YMCA. The value of peace building is something that's core to the YMCA, and it's part of our work year-round. It can be local, international, or both. Sometimes peace building work means sharing ideas and resources across borders, but sometimes it's just simply reaching out to build connections and understand each other better. YMCAs across Canada this week are celebrating peace in different ways, and one of the ways that we all come together is with the award of Peace Medallions. Just prior to this meeting, we met in the lounge down the hall, and we made 3 awards to different people in our community who exemplify the values of peace. We have 3 different categories. We do a group category, an adult category, and a youth category. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to the winners from this year. The group award went to Interact Rotary Group. It's a sponsored service club that gives young people an opportunity to participate in fun and meaningful service projects while developing leadership skills and making friends. Their basic principles follow Rotary principles: help others, service above self. Globally, within the past year, the group raised money to support Nicaragua, which helped pay for the construction of a building for an elderly man. Locally, they helped the Medicine Hat Food Bank by raising 1,000 craft dinner boxes. They also volunteered time to Prairie Gleaners, Salvation Army, and the Hot Meal Program. I have two representatives down here with me that I would like to introduce to you on behalf of the Interact Rotary Club. This is Aslan and Jocelyn.
Congratulations.
The winner in our youth category is Jade Lavadier. Jade's a student at St. Mary's Middle School who leads by example. Her positive and friendly nature impacts everyone that she deals with, and she's a budding artist in the Fine Arts program. She also continues her activities outside of school in dance and cadets. She shows active participation in school and in her community, and shows empathy in her interactions at all times. Globally, with cadets, she's learned about peace efforts through travel to France and visiting Vimy Ridge. I would like to introduce you to Jade Lavadier. And in our final category, the adult category, we awarded the Peace Medallion to Brittany Komistek. The theme for this year's Peace Week is youth. And while Brittany may have won in the adult category, she is very much still a youth at heart and exemplifies the values of youth in our community. She's currently a United Way Youth Ambassador, a position that was created specifically to display young people and what they do for our community. Their pillars are volunteer, give, and act, which Brittany exemplifies. In the United Way's letter of support for Brittany, they said that she always displays great spirit and compassion. She's helped them with tools for schools and helped raise over $10,000 for the Brown Bag Program. Outside of the United Way, Brittany also created the Little Britches Rodeo Queen pageant. This has given young women an opportunity to build confidence and skills through the sport of rodeo, public speaking, and modeling. Of course, thrown in that is also horseback riding. Brittany's been a great role model for these young women. The other neat thing that Brittany's done that really impressed us, we learned a little bit about her and her love for Converse shoes. So she developed quite a collection of Converse shoes, all in a size that fit youth 4 to 6. Recognizing the need for kids to have good shoes for school, she most recently donated that entire collection to Elm Street School. She also now has the opportunity to give back to all of Canada, having just been crowned Miss Rodeo Canada. We're very proud to give our adult Peace Medallion to Brittany Komistek.
Congratulations.
And on behalf of the YMCA, thank you so much for the proclamation of this week as Peace Week. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Congratulations to all 4 of you. Thank you very much. Can we get a motion?
So moved. Second.
We could vote. Councillor Turnbull? That was unanimous. Thank you. We could take a break if people want to leave. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you're having trouble sleeping.
Okay, moving on to our second presentation tonight. This is in relation to item 5.4, page 27 in your packets. The Mayor is going to present the Government Finance Officers Association Canadian Award for Financial Reporting and Popular Annual Financial Report to Dennis Egert, who's our General Manager of Finance, and Lee Prestako, who's our Manager of Corporate Communications.
Every year, and that maybe diminishes the value of this, but it shouldn't. This is a lot of hard work on our staff that we continuously. And it seems like second nature that we keep getting it, but it is a lot of hard work, and we are one of only 40, 20 roughly. 10 in Canada. So, congratulations.
Your worship, I'll move reception.
Second.
If we could call the question. And that was unanimous. Thank you.
Moving on now to communications. On page 8, you'll find Alberta Health Services letter regarding emergency medical services for information.
So moved.
Any questions, comments? Councillor Dumanowski?
Your worship, I don't really have any questions, maybe a comment. Obviously, the letter clearly spells out that the RFP process that was endeavored by Alberta Health Services includes a change order, if you will, with our flights out of Medicine Hat. As far as medevacs are concerned, I guess in the most obvious way that people will understand this. It is I guess a sad day to see a long-serving supporter of health services and medevacs lose that, but I think as a community we have to grapple with this, and it's not to say that I'm choosing sides or changing my allegiance. I think what we have to look at now is our partnership with CanWest and the community, and trying to identify the best relationship that we can have with them in order to ensure that the security of our community, as far as health services is concerned, is supported on a government level, municipal government level. So it's unfortunate that we've lost a long-term partnership, but we have a new one, and we want to ensure that partnership continues to be supported in as robust way as possible, and anything that we can do as a municipal government, as a support network, to partner with Alberta Health Services, and ultimately CanWest will be in the best stead of all of our community. And so with that, I guess I wanted to offer my support to CanWest and ensure the public that we are working to ensure that relationship is going to be as positive as possible for our citizens.
Thank you. Councillor Friesen?
Well, pardon me, I echo what Councillor Dumanowski said. Just by way of background for those who are listening, Integra has served our city with the air ambulance medevac contract for many, many years and done a tremendous service. And so I'm really, and this is not speaking against CanWest, but I can tell you I've been extremely disappointed that Integra was not awarded the contract, and we certainly along with some other communities in Alberta, asked some very hard questions of Alberta Health. Things like, what about our people? What will happen? Will they get the same kind of service? What will happen when they're in that golden hour, when they need medical services? Will the ambulance still be there? Will it be the same kind of quality of service as we have had in the past? Will our folks be taken care of? That was absolutely primary in our mind, and we really, I think we fought the good fight to make sure that our folks are taken care of. So like Councillor Dumanowski said, I'll certainly be supporting CanWest and getting behind them as the service provider. I can also tell you, and I just want to extend my thanks to Integra for the incredible service they've offered in our community in the past. So a disappointment, but I guess an opportunity for the future, and I want to ensure that everyone knows that we made sure they are going to be taken care of when their medical needs are the greatest.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Oh, I think we have a motion for reception already, so if we could call the vote. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Moving on to reports now. On page 9, you'll find item 5.1, Development and Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes of November 8th, and this report is for adoption.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any comments? Okay, if we could vote. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is 5.2 on page 13, Energy and Utilities Committee meeting of November the 9th, and this is for information.
You want to move it for information?
Yes, move to accept.
Second. For information. Thank you. Any comments? Questions? Councillor Samraj?
I just had a question about this. This is just about an update for the 2017 program. It has nothing to do with the authorization for funds for the 2018 program, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All right, if we could vote. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is 5.3 on page 18, the Public Services Committee meeting minutes of November 10th, and this report's for adoption and information.
I'll move the report for adoption and information as indicated.
Second that.
Any questions, comments? Councillor Samraj?
I have a question for the CAO about the transit. So we're on schedule for November 27th to return to the old system. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Samraj, that's correct. Next Monday, we'll be rolling out the old system again.
I had a follow-up question.
Yes, go ahead.
So the second half of the motion that was passed on September 18th was that they go back to the old system while directing staff to continue to seek a better solution. Could you tell me how staff interpret that part of the motion?
Through the chair to Councillor Samraj, absolutely. So what we hope to do going forward is to present council with service standards, and especially as we get electronic fare boxes and better data in terms of hard data, in terms of council, our bus system utilization, it'll be a lot easier to say these are the standards that council endorses, and from that, here are some areas where we could improve. So that's the sort of thing we'll be bringing forward in the future to council as we have that data and have the analysis for you.
Councillor Friesen?
Thank you. Through the chair to the CAO, with respect to transit and our ongoing discussion with the province regarding the money for what they call pilot projects to the cities of Calgary and Edmonton, and none to any other community in Alberta. I'm wondering if you can give us any highlights of those negotiations. Is it looking more positive? You know, I've heard things that say the province is considering maybe some money, others that no way, it's not coming. And of course, my fond hope is that we might be able to recover some of this expenditure, just like Calgary and Edmonton have. So any updates on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Friesen. No, not really. So this is money that has been earmarked in Calgary and Edmonton for essentially implementing a fair entry policy, so subsidizing transit use for those that fall below certain income levels. And they have firmly, whenever we have asked to take part in it, we've written letters along with the other mid-sized cities to ask for it, we've lobbied and so on, but there's been no opening at all to even negotiate this. It's been called pilot projects. We have no certainty around the duration of the pilot project, even in terms of when they would actually firm up some policy, hopefully, once they've piloted it and analyzed it. So we really have nothing to go on there. And any time we've tried to open the door to discuss it, they just say, no, it's a pilot program and we're not talking about it.
Councillor-
Okay,
oh,
well, just in follow-up, if
go
I
ahead.
could. I still personally remain hopeful that there may be some opportunity for that in the future, and I know some of the changes in transit certainly were most impactful for the folks who might qualify for a fair entry. So from my point of view, if we were able to retrieve some of that money, we could probably justify using it in this area. And to Councillor Samaraj's point, although transit will return to its former state on the 27th, along with lots of valuable information for people using it, it's still the spirit and intent of that motion was to continue to seek a solution, a long-term solution. So I appreciate your work on that.
Thank you. Councillor Turner?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to our CEO. I know we have some plans in the works for installation of, I guess, more electronics on the buses so we can really get a better idea of just what passengers are using what routes. And also, I hear there's maybe a phone app coming as well. That people can access when the bus is going to be coming to their location on their smartphones. And I'm just wondering if we have any timelines as to when that might be happening in the future. I think there's some provincial money for that, if I recall.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, I believe it is in next year's budget, but I would have to double check that. But certainly the plans are there, and we will be implementing electronic fare boxes and a number of other smaller improvements, and all of them will help us gather better data. That's not to say we don't have data today, but it's more survey-based and more based on driver information and things like that. So this will be much more systematic and more complete data to do our analysis on.
Councillor Samaraj?
If I can leave transit for a moment, I want to talk about the second half of that, about the fee charges for 2018. I had a few comments and then maybe a question for the CAO. So to give people a little history about this, and if my recollection of this is wrong, I hope somebody will correct me. In 2016, in December, City Council passed a motion, Policy 160, that established a new type of framework that staff would use to develop user fees. So the user fees that we've seen, the increases that we see last year and then we saw this year again, come out of that specific framework, specifically around the people who use it pay. So if there's a high community benefit, the subsidy is high. If there's a low community benefit, then you pay as close to it as we can. I guess the question I have is, how do we know that the user fees that the framework comes up with are fair? And maybe you could just speak to how we know that they're reasonable for the community, whether we look at other cities to see how comparable our fees are. Thanks.
So through the chair, we certainly look at a whole host of information. This is not a mechanistic exercise at all. In the past, it was very much just looking at comparable information and much more subjective look at what was felt as fair, as opposed to anything with some analytical underpinning. So what this has allowed us to do is to continue to look at pricing points, private offerings and prices, what other communities are doing, but in addition to that, have a systematic and upfront way to pinpoint exactly how much we subsidize each service. So that is an additional information point. It's not the only one, but it's allowed us through running this process through council, through stakeholder groups and focus groups, as well as staff, to kind of hone in on some subsidy targets. And they're ranges, they're not hard and fast numbers, but it's saying that over time, we would like this particular group of services to move towards 70% subsidy instead of 75% subsidy, for example. And that's not to say that that whole gap gets made up by increased user fees. We would also consider changing the service offering to get more people to be interested in it. We would consider cost cutting. We would consider all kinds of other ways of arriving at that subsidy target. So again, it's not a mechanistic answer, but it provides a target, and that is systematic, and that is underpinned by some analysis, and that keeps council from having to go through 300 lines of individual fees and deciding subjectively whether they feel that that's a fair fee or not. So it lifts the discussion up to a much more strategic policy level discussion for council to have, and then for staff to consider all the different ways that we can reach those targets.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Turnbull?
Yes, I have two questions for, through the chair, to CEO Hegland. Item 2, addition of one permanent established position for a fleet services mechanic position, which is presently funded as a temporary position and was expected to be eliminated under the redesigned transit system. So I'm assuming that person was, under the old system, was actually that position, right? So we're not adding actually a new one, just replacing the one that we didn't have, the one that we had before.
So through the chair, the redesign of the transit system did not happen overnight. This is something that was worked on for a couple of years, and as part of that, we also kept an eye on our fleet staffing, and so we thought for a long time that we would be able to eliminate that position, and with the new transit system, we would have eliminated that position, but we kept it on as a temporary position in anticipation of the new transit system. Now that that system is not being implemented, we need that position permanently, and so we're asking to have it reverted from a temporary to a permanent. It's already budgeted for, the position is there,
Okay.
It's just a change in status now that we're going back to the old system, because we need those heavy-duty mechanics with CNG expertise in particular. That's not something that we can find in the community at large, and so we need to have that staff complement here to deal with the buses that we have.
Good. It's just that when people read that, it's like we're adding a new position that we didn't have before. Okay, thank you. My second question, through the chair to CEO Hegland, is there's in the city, taxpayers who subsidize all the services that we have, such as recreation, fire, roads. So they pay that through their taxes, and then they see their user fees going up, and they see increases in taxes. And so you know that, from my point of view, is that I know these fees are already budgeted for the 2018 year, correct? So we're looking at, in January, to do the 2019 and 2020 budgets. So I'm hoping that as a council and as administration, we will also look at finding ways to lower the cost to operate some of these services so that we cannot continue to keep adding more fees and more taxes. I recognize the subsidy levels. A lot of them are fair, and so we'll take a look at that, but I just want you to maybe comment on the fact that we do need somehow to learn as a community to do things as reasonably and cost-efficient as possible. Thank you.
You agree?
Through the chair to Councillor Turnbull, I'm not quite sure what the question is, but yes, I agree, if that's what you're looking for. I think I said earlier, too, that certainly cost reduction is one way of managing it, right? I mean, and so when we started out on the whole financially fit framework, the basic tenet was that any increases you're asking for anywhere, you have to earn the right to ask for, in a sense. So the starting point is cost control across the board on everything. And if we don't do that, we certainly can't be asking for user fees or tax increases or anything else.
Just can reply?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for that, because I think that's really important. When I was campaigning and knocking on doors, that was the single biggest question people were asking. When, as a city, are we going to, think outside the box to find new ways to do things more reasonably priced and still offer a top-notch service? So thank you for that.
Councillor Samraj?
I had another comment and then maybe another question for the CAO. So fair warning to people here in that the user fees are going up this year, but to hit the target subsidies for some of these fees, they do plan on going up next year as well. Is that correct?
You're phasing some of them in? I
Yeah.
think that's the question, yeah.
So I guess then this comes back to another point. So every year this comes before council and we get to say yay or nay on that. Obviously the framework that the fees are based on was done by the last council. So this council is not necessarily beholden to that, but I don't like to do things piecemeal either. I mean, you don't want to necessarily say no to this without addressing the actual framework that the fees were used to create the fees there. So I guess my comment is, my question is, that would be the proper way of doing it too, is to, if you have a problem with the fees now, to look at the policy that actually was responsible for creating the fees.
Through the chair, just so, yes, a good question, Councillor Samraj. Just so it's clarity on council, this is an information item because the policy has been set. The policy with the subsidy framework has been set by past council. So if this council wants to revisit that policy framework, there would have to be direction to staff, motion and agreement in council to direct that policy back to staff for revision. Otherwise, these fees and charges are coming forward for information because they're now set based on that framework outlined in the policy.
That makes, yep, okay. Councillor Hirsch?
So just in the spirit of transit as well, I acknowledge that the reversion of the plan is back to the old system, so I won't go down that road. But I do want to kind of address the elephant in the room and the fact that the optics are out there that these empty buses are still continuing to happen, which is a sensitive subject all by itself when we're trying to drive efficiencies. So I think that the question that is begged, quite frankly, is there a movement towards efficiencies? And to what degree can we make those efficiencies? And it might be the size of the buses, et cetera, because quite frankly, this was discussed over a decade ago. So, you know, we're still in this situation. Can we deal with smaller buses and stuff like that? But I think the understanding is loud and clear. Let's be sensitive to the needs of the ridership that's out there. But I just want a little bit of an understanding in terms of, certainly this issue isn't necessarily dead on arrival. I'm just wanting to understand whether or not we're looking sympathetic to the ridership, but what are we looking at in terms of some of the efficiencies down the road?
Through the chair to Councillor Hirsch, I think the answer to that is that we need to look at those service levels and hear from council what it is you would like, the standard you would like us to run the system to. Because right now, we are not really sure what council wants, quite frankly, in terms of those standards. We had set out the 400 and 800 meter standard, for example, as one to adhere to, and heard through the revision now that 800 is not acceptable. So is it 400? Is it 400 on peak, off peak? I mean, again, we'd have to bring that forward and kind of get a proper framework so the service standard can be set before we can look at how we can most efficiently meet that service standard.
Councillor Turnbull?
We're not picking on you, I promise. But on page 20, it says the funding for the $650,000 derived from the, will be derived from an increase in 2018 tax revenue of 1%. The previously budgeted general tax increase for 2018 was 4%, which will therefore increase to 5%. Is that in, are we done with that, or are we going to discuss how that is going to be made up? Because I will not support a tax increase to cover that. There must be other ways and means of finding $650,000 than go to a 5% tax increase. So I just wanted your comment on that.
So through the chair, we have talked about that at the staff level, what we would do if council does not support it. Because on the one hand, we have an approved budget. So we've been told to spend a certain amount. We've been told not to spend $650,000 more, going back to the old transit system. That is what it costs. I can't change that. On the other hand, if council will not put through the tax increase to meet that budget, we are by then a quarter of the way through the year, and I honestly don't know what we would have to do. It would be extraordinary measures to find that money. So, yeah, I'm really not sure. Obviously, the final tax increase comes for a vote separately to council in the April-May kind of timeframe, May probably. So if council rejects it, I honestly don't know what to do at that point, but I guess we will deal with that issue if and when.
Just as a follow-up, and I get that. And obviously, so tell me if I'm wrong, we are going to take $17 million out of reserves for the 2018 budget year, correct? So rather than face another 1% tax increase when we're already facing 4%, and who knows what's going to come at us this year. So from where I stand, yeah, you have to have the money. I get that. So we'll just have to use another $650,000 out of reserves until we find what Councillor Hurst said, till we find those means and ways of operating our systems more efficiently. But just throwing tax increases, and then, well, that's your job. You have a budget. That was given to you. It's not your fault that this has all come back to haunt us. But that would just be an indication for me that we will get you your money, because you have to have it, but not through tax increase.
Councillor Friesen, go ahead.
I just wanted to wrap that up. With respect to what Councillor Turnbull just said, I agree. I would like to look at some other options rather than a 1% tax increase, and I'll be supporting that. We can talk about that later before it comes forward. And I just wanted to comment on the fees and charges as well. There's a few things about fees and charges. I mean, they're very difficult. No one ever wants to talk about fees and charges, and no one wants to pay increased fees. I don't. Nobody does. Having said that, it's very important for people to realize the level to which their services, most of their services, are subsidized. And so we're not looking for a full cost recovery, which is often what people think. When we have increases in fees, they think, oh, well, we're just raising the fee to make sure that it covers the cost of the service. So that's absolutely not the case, and there are many different levels of subsidy that we offer for various and assorted things. So we're going to have, we brought the model of how we looked at these things to council in open, many months ago now. And so I'm going to recommend, and I will take it through Public Services, that we have it brought back to council so that the folks at home can see again and be reminded about how we went about deciding about those things, the increases. And just a couple of other things I just want to make you aware of. Some of the things that went along with the fee increases are things like we didn't put ourselves in a position of competing with the private sector. So organizations who provide, swimming and other things like that in our community, recreation services, we're not going to put ourselves in a position of undercutting them and jeopardizing their business. So that's one of the things. If fee increases look like they would exceed a threshold of 20%, we're not going to just hit the organizations with them. We are going to phase them in over time so it's more palatable. We instituted fair entry in the last year, and I had thought we'd have a huge uptake, far larger than we've had. So we've looked, and these numbers aren't exact, but I think it's about 119 that have been processed and approved. So far, covering about 127 people. That doesn't include transit yet, so I suspect those numbers will go up. But that, just so that you're assured that everyone has an opportunity to access the services. And also, it's interesting to see that there is some increased revenue in terms of memberships and those kinds of things at some of our facilities, like the Family Leisure Center, and in fact, some of the services and rentals and so on at the Esplanade. So it's not all a bad picture. We're experiencing increases where I feared we might see reductions. So the interest is still high, and I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. Also, capacity still exists at the FLC. So we still have lots of capacity to accommodate, and some of our fears around ice surfaces, that has not been realized either. We're still able to accommodate our groups too. So there are, although fees and charges are so tough, there are some good news stories around them as well. And pardon me, I'll commit to bringing that process, sorry, it's cold season, I think, that process back to everyone so you can see again how it worked and how the policy position was derived.
So I'm just going to throw this out there. Does council see a need to perhaps separate these two items and vote on them separately? No? Okay. We'll keep them together then. I think what Councillor McIntosh and I are in a bit of it because we voted against the reversion back. Maybe you don't want me reminding people of that. No, it's okay. But now it is a decision of council to move forward with the old transit. But so I'm in a bit of a quandary here because, of course, I voted not to revert, and yet I should vote for the budget amendment for 1%, which was the reason I voted against reverting transit back, so we wouldn't have to do exactly this. So that's, I don't know, Councillor McIntosh, anyway. No, for me, as the mayor, it is a decision of council to go back to the original transit, and so therefore I think as a decision of council, I have to support this budget amendment. That's where I'm at. Okay? Any other comments? Okay, we could vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
The next report is item 5.4, page 27, Corporate Services Committee meeting November 14th. This report's for information.
So moved.
And we dealt with this earlier. Any other? Oh, seconder, sorry. Okay. Okay, any questions or comments? We dealt with this earlier, but give staff kudos one more time because it is fantastic that we keep winning this, so thank you. All right, if we could vote. Oh, yeah, all right. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. And that was unanimous, thank you.
Now to reports for reception, item 6.1, page 34, is the MPC meeting minutes from September 27th.
I move this report for reception.
I'll second that.
Questions, comments? All right, if we could vote. And that was unanimous, thank you.
I received no notice of motion, so I'll move on to new business. First item is 8.1 on page 40. It's our 2018 committee and council meeting calendar for adoption.
Thank you.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Okay, if we could vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
And our last piece of new business is appointment of Councillor McIntosh to the Friends of Medalta Board for 2018. Can I get a motion to appoint, please?
I'll move that.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Samrush?
I just wanted to let the public know why this is happening. Obviously, I was appointed to Medalta's board earlier this month, but Safira, my wife, does some contract work there, and we figured that might be a conflict of interest with me being on the board. So we've changed councillor reps for that.
Yep. Any other questions, comments? Okay, if we could vote. And that was unanimous, thank you. Seeing no more business before this council, we are adjourned.